Welcome back to another video on Gearsaw Studios, and today I'm going to be showing you how to build yourself a futuristic river base. And while it's a little bit larger, it can definitely be built as your first base. A little bit of a generic exterior, of course, since it's on a frozen river, you can use boats to move super fast along it, and then under the river, you can see I have a really nice futuristic room with a few new building skills that I added in. So, without further ado, let's investigate how we'd go about building this. And one final thing, if you need any help with this build, of course, comment down below. I'm always available for helping with tutorials if I don't properly explain something. Starting off, first find yourself an area, preferably in a frozen river, although technically just about any biome could be used for this. And then you'll want to build two arches. The distance between each other is not really important, but preferably an odd number. You can see here, easily divisible, right here 5, 5, 1, so it's 11. And then make sure you can build a circle in it. This will be a little lookout tower. And then on one side, you'll want to have a walkway connecting the two ends, preferably using dark prismarine as part of the palette. And then on the other end, you can see where they don't connect, right here, we want to leave this completely blank. And we can start building from here. Of course, if you're building this in a frozen river, you're going to have to contend with ice. And the problem with ice in this case is the fact that, well, you might miss something. Fortunately, there's going to be an area right under the water that isn't underground in order to make sure that we can see anything that might be wrong with the upper layers. Anyways, going back up, then what we want to do is fill in the walls, preferably only on this side though, with glass. And maybe something like this, fill it across. And here's the thing, right here, we don't want to use glass though. Everywhere else, yes, but this part, no. Which means you should be building something like this, and then should be decently simple. What we're going for is a more open futuristic aesthetic. Something that's not super closed off, has a lot of windows, but of course it's also in a weird position, being on a frozen river. But on this end, I want to include some decorational spire things, which means we shouldn't have windows here. Which means it's white concrete time. And you might want to mix in some white concrete powder for the extra texture. And maybe you might also want to make it 2 blocks thick, this area here. And then when it's 2 blocks thick, then you can include something more useful on the other side. Although that is completely optional. Either way, start filling it in, and then the central spire, do white concrete, and make it maybe a few blocks taller than the rest of the area. Right here, you can see I'm starting to build that tower in the middle. Right here, I have a little bit of a support holding it up, did a little decoration on the outside, using some concrete powder, and then added these weird things here. I don't know what they're for, but they look cool. And then they go underwater. I used copy paste incorrectly here. Make sure that they go all the way into the ground, like this, and then check their backs, make sure there aren't any errors there either. And now going back to the surface, frozen rivers, well, you can see here, I still have that curve, but there's something wrong with it, and that's the fact that it needs to be 2 blocks thick. The reason being is when you make it 2 blocks thick, then it's a lot sturdier looking, and then when you add the wall in, then it looks a lot cooler. So try it, see if you can do it, but it's really pretty easy. You just look at the direction it's facing, and then, well, you thicken it up. You can see sometimes that creates awkward points, but luckily those can be fixed because we can, look at it and see what doesn't work. Then when you do this, you can add a door if you want. Personally, it might not fit, but looking around the area, and since mobs can't spawn on ice, I think you'd be fine. Although if you're really concerned, remember, if you stack 4 carpets on top of each other, by the way, window here, then mobs will have a lot of trouble walking over it. So you can always do that trick if you don't feel like adding a normal door would work, which I don't think would. Let's be honest, having the space here and then put a dark oak door on it, yeah, that'd look pretty silly. You could do a piston door, but I'm a builder, not a redstoner. So, maybe hold off on that and just add the carpets. Right here, you can see, thicken this up. Then added cyan terracotta along the bottom layer, added white concrete powder, and now we have walls. Did the carpet to keep the mobs out. Make sure that you don't forget the gray concrete surrounding it, like this. And then, we don't necessarily need the circle indicator here, which means we can get rid of it. If you're wondering why there's no particles, it's because I froze time. Yeah, I was too annoying with the ice, so I decided to just freeze time because that's a Gearsaw power. Anyways, you can see, made the window here open up so that way there's access into here from the outside. And then I put some packed ice here. And the reason why I put packed ice here, by the way, don't forget to put a lot of sea lanterns around the build like this, especially on these parts. Well, once I light up the area by turning it to day, well, here. Imagine you're trying to get into this base. You know, it's in a frozen river. Seems like it would be in a rather weird position. But because the river is frozen, we can ice boat. And we can have an ice boat area here. And potentially even make it into a racetrack. If you want to do that, well, there should be a tutorial appearing in the top right just for that purpose. But anyways, if you want to have the ice boat track, of course, do that. But essentially, this should be an area to put the ice boats. So preferably put something in the middle where you can ram it right into, so that way you don't have to decelerate going in, you can crash, ignore Minecraft physics, ignore real life physics as well. And what do you know? Fast deceleration. Anyways, going up here, then what we want it to do is jut out by 1 block. Say we want it to end here, then maybe something like this, and then keep the cyan concrete on the inside, which should look something like this when done. And then we open it up on this side, maybe a window, or maybe just a plain wall, something like that. Either way, this should be a roofed in area. And then for this spire here, added a little ring around the top. And we should have a way to get up here, preferably bubble elevators, although spiral staircases are also an acceptable form. And because you guys saw how much I did, well, it's time to see what happens if I unfreeze time. So tick unfreeze, let's see. And you can see a little bit happens, this whole area floods, you know, typical stuff. So yeah, this is, you know, a little trick. You can pause time if you're on Java Edition if something is annoying you in the game. Right here, you can see I built a little area for you to put the boats. And by having this area, here's how it might work. Say I'm sailing around in a nice little chest boat. Oh, first time I've ever used one of these. Well, you can see going around, you know, being weird. And then, hey, I want to go home. So I go over here, do a cool drift, and then I can bonk into something. What do you know? Unload the stuff, go inside, see that I have no basement, but you get the idea. I can park my boats here, and then I can turn them right around, go hyperspeed around, go wherever I want as long as the frozen river lets me, and what do you know? I have super good transport and my base is right in the middle of that network. At night, you can see I have more of the base complete, and right here, what you want to do is build a dome. Preferably, you should use the sphere generator if you have not built domes before. And once you have this dome, we can make an observation deck up here. And by having that, well, it just looks cool. And another thing, you can add little gray concrete spikes like this in order to make the dome seem reinforced. And then, once you do that, you go smaller and smaller, you build the dome as usual, and hopefully you try figuring out how to do it without a generator. It's a little daunting at first, especially since I don't have any connected glass mods enabled, but basically you want to go smaller and smaller, and then you have these little patterns here, where they look like this. If you have a pattern that looks like this, and your circle is roughly this size, then you are doing good. And then, once you go higher, then you have another ring. Basically, there should be this ring going around here, 2, 1, 3, 1, 2. And of course, add back the gray concrete here. And then, we want that ring to connect up here as well. So that way, whatever we did on the sides will mirror the top. And then, once all is said and done, then you'll have something roughly looking like this, probably 1 block taller. So that way it's, you know, more round. And then at the end of it, what do you know? I have a dome. It's a little too pointy with that extra addition, so I'm going to flatten it out again to make it more sphere. And at the end, well, what do you know? You have a nice dome up here, a nice observation deck, and then you have your boat storage. Notably, I put some light blue concrete under here, and then I do little spikes like ice, a little bit packed ice, then packed ice go out, ice, packed ice, ice, packed ice. And you can see under it the concrete just for the added effect. If you're wondering what it looks like underwater, here's what it looks like. Nothing super crazy here, just generic wall. But here I'm going to add a window. And then for this side that's facing not the outside, I'll have the storage. You will need sponges for this though. But now you have a base that can be situated anywhere where there is a river, preferably a frozen river, but still, it's really nice to have a base connected to frozen rivers so that way you can use ice boats to their full potential. With this little dome completed, well, it's time to move on to the interior. Notice I added a little bit of oxidized slabs up there, then did a bubble elevator and a powder snow fall down area. And you can see glass panes just for extra lighting, and then go up, and you can see it's perfectly livable as well. And ender chest, re-gearing station, and otherwise just some basic decorations. Now going back down, which just to prove it, powder snow plus carpet trick. And then with that, I have this open area here, and then I have this lower area. And turning on some night vision for this, well, we have a few things. One, of course, this is underwater. We need to prevent it from flooding, so of course start adding some gray concrete in. I'll be adding some white concrete walls in. Unfortunately, we can't use concrete powder down here. Pretty unfortunate, but oh well. And then what we want to do is start adding more concrete, and then on these walls, when possible, I recommend making giant windows. Of course, the specific building location I picked doesn't favor it on this side, so I will have to get rid of that. But for this side, I can have a nice pretty window, make a good thumbnail, things like that. And while this isn't necessarily the most interesting build, well, it's certainly a utilitarian one. So keep it in mind that, well, you're in a very good transportation area. So you should probably make the base pretty, well, useful in that regard. We already have the ice boat racing area. Well, is there anything you can do down here? I mean, there's this giant cave. Who knows? You might want to set up a conduit, make this the entrance to your mine. Who knows? There's a lot of stuff you could do down here because, well, you have access to the riverbed. And while riverbeds aren't exciting, they are a bit closer to the underground, so who knows? Either way, build those big windows, use some concrete, make sure the windows are indented by one block, and then you will have a really nice area in the form of the space, even if it's not the most exciting looking. Down here, a little bit of a jump cut. You can see, filled in the walls, I have glass here, a copper ceiling. I will add some normal copper to it. Well, not normal, but you probably get what I mean. I'm going to add some of this to it in order to make it a bit more detailed. You can add this to any part of the build you want. And potentially, you might even want to make it in less random patterns and more shaped like wires to make it look like there's something going through the top. Anyways, with that aside, the lighting here is done by these sea lanterns held up by chains. However, there's something you might want to do. I saw this trick online, it is really cool. If I remember, there should be a card appearing right about here, referencing the YouTuber I found it from, so thank you. And then you can do a banner, you do some white dye, and then you go into the loom, and what you do is you go to the gradient, something like this. I think I got the colors backwards, but this is the idea. You can see, add a little bit of a lampshade around it, and it makes the thing more interesting. Potentially even add a slab of your choice. I'm gonna say dark prismarine, and now you have a more interesting light in the end. And, well, not literally in the end, this is overworld, but still, the light should be better looking like this, rather than like that. Right here, you can see the lights are added. I have this trapdoor area for enchanting, grindstone down here for easy access to disenchanting, and then armor trim wall, all your furnace and foraging stuff over here, this wall is incomplete, and then I have these wires on the ceiling that jut out, and I like the look of it. Anyways, bubble elevator up and down, color coded by the way. And then you can see right here, although I'm not going to complete it, access to the mines. All you need to do is go down. And of course, this one would probably be a bubble elevator up, and this would literally just be a straight drop down using some glow lichen to prevent the water from flowing in. And then going back up, I swapped the positions of the elevators, so yeah, it just is more open. You can place whatever you need up here. I recommend making sure you have crafting tables and such. And now, well, this space is getting closer and closer to finished. Is it necessarily the most exciting? No. You could probably add railings here and there, like this. Here, I'll just add some. So glass, and then you want to put down some carpet, like this, and then line the glass up. Maybe open up the back so that way there'd be a natural entrance, you know, as if this wasn't on areas you don't want to walk on in real life. And then you just plop the carpet on like this. Might be a little bit easier if you turn off view bobbing. And what do you know? You have a little railing. You might want to make smaller changes like this to account for that. And well, it's just an area. And yeah, you can fill this place up with whatever you need, and you can expand it if need be. Because, well, you have this whole river, or you could go underground. So, storage area here, whatever I need here, stuff like that. Right here, you can see I just added a painting, but back here, I've completed that area mostly. You can see how I put down some chests on the wall, something more traditional, then a barrel wall, for those things you want to put item frames on but don't need massive amounts of, like, you know, bones, stuff like that. And then right here is our bulk storage for things that you're going to have too much of, like cobblestone, dirt, netherrack, etc. And then filled up the rest of the room with other utilities. This area right here is a little bare. I might have to add a few things to it. But anyways, you can see how I put in everything I needed down here. Up here, admittedly, I could add more. I'll probably do that as part of the final clips. And then potentially maybe mix in a little bit more white concrete powder. I'm trying to avoid using as much because the thing is, well, some of those walls touch the water, which means all we're doing is wasting resources. So, you know, it's up to you whether you want to include the white concrete powder at all. Other alternatives include bone blocks and iron blocks, but those usually just fall into my this is survival unfriendly policy, considering how expensive those can be. Because, you know, 1 bone block, 3 bones, bones are quite valuable. Anyways, with all of this going on, a little bit of the cool stuff on the ceiling, more of those banners, well, it's time to finish up the storage system. Right here for the chests, you can see that when I place down all of them, by the way, replace the bamboo mosaic with whatever block you're sorting here. It's good storage practice. Then, I can still open it because those blocks are slabs. Copy this around, and then right here, I have a little bit of a unique trick. So I'm going to turn on a bit of night vision for this. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete the ground. Just like this. Go, yeah, this is probably deep enough. This is only if you have a beacon, I'd say. And then, once I'm this far down, then get a block that would most resemble what the walls would look like if they're much, much larger. As in, we're going to make a gradient here. So we can start with white. We'd probably go with white wool. Actually, white concrete powder would be much more fitting. And then, as we go down, we want to go to slightly less and less bright blocks. Preferably ones with mild textures. Diorite probably is a little bit too much for this, so we're going to have to go a little bit smoother, like quartz. Smooth quartz works. Actually, too bright. Well, anyways, I'll assemble the palette off camera. But then, what you want to do would be place down some glass. So maybe blue, a few different shades. And then what you want to do is make the top normal glass in order to provide a baseline. And then we do a few colors here, and then we get darker as we go, and then the bottom could potentially just be blue completely. Although blue directly might not be the best choice. But anyways, what I want to do is mix in some sea lanterns into these layers. So build each layer of course, after you do the walls, so like, a few blocks here, go darker and darker down to a more bluish shade. So maybe the final things could be something like warped stem. So like this, maybe? Who knows? And then once you have that gradient going from light to dark, well, dark being blue in this case, then, of course, make these layers go completely across, add the sea lanterns, and you'll have something really pretty to look at whenever you're trying to do storage stuff. Doing some minor changes because the gradient's now in place, you can see how I muddy up the layers borders a little in order to make it a bit more varied. I introduced calcite into this, which actually works as an amazing texturing tool, so, consider that. But anyways, something I would like to do is, instead of using sea lanterns, try end rods. The thing is about end rods is, unlike basically just every other block in the game, they're thin and they have basically no counterpart. It took all the way until 1.17 from their edition in 1.9 to get anything that resembled them in the form of copper rods, and those are lightning rods anyways and have a functional purpose. So this is really just a weird block to work with. So now, with this, then I fill in the layer, and when I do this, well, you'll notice I'll have a pretty gradient, and it even lights it up. So doing this, of course I recommend fill commands when possible, and then you can see here, I have a layer. And then I'll repeat this process, of course a bit more intentionally rather than just holding down right click and spinning. Yeah, spin attacks, no, spinning is not a good trick when it comes to building. But here, you can see, well, more end rods. Now I go in with cyan, and then, well, actually, no, I'm not doing this today. I'm just gonna fill it. But anyways, once you see that, then you can do cyan stained glass, and what do you know? Another layer. And then you can continue doing this, and yeah, I'm just gonna hold right click. Oh, that pattern actually is pretty decent. And then just repeat this until you reach the top. Right here, with all the layers done, you can see looks very nice, even if the bottom isn't very visible. And then for the floorings here, I just added some wires, the same stuff on the ceiling, and then made sure there's always dark prismarine stairs surrounding it. Of course, this build is actually a bit of a challenge for myself to see, can I avoid using dark oak for once? And the answer seems like yes, even if it's not the most exciting exterior. And I'm going to fill this in the next clip. Just basic stuff, nothing to worry about. Still, it's an interesting build nonetheless. Even though the top is a basic concept, still, you get access to ice boats so you can go around crazy fast. And then you can go down here. You have these little windows across the water. And then you even have storage, a nice gradient, and an interesting futuristic vibe to work with. It's not a mega base by any means, you could make it one if you wanted to, but still, it's a nice little base, not necessarily your first base, but still a starter base nonetheless. So, if you're interested in living in this kind of area, well, you can always build it. Find a random area with a frozen river, and then just build it. With some minor interior details right there, well, it's the end of today's video. If you enjoyed this video, remember, please like and subscribe, it really helps me out. And if you want to see a tutorial, well, you can always suggest it. It doesn't have to be anything too complex. Of course, I can't do giant tutorials usually, but if you want to see a certain kind of house done in a certain way, well, of course, comment down below, give me a rough description of what it will look like, and well, I'll see what I can do. Either way, enjoy the rest of your day. Gearsaw out.